All right, in this video, we are going to learn all the chord shapes you need to know to be able to play in the key of D major. We're going to be working up the D major scale, showing you the chord shapes you need to know to play in that chord family, as well as some variations. And if you stick around till the end of the video, I'm even going to show you some movable shapes that'll really just unlock your playing in the key of D, and also a tool you can put in your tool belt for the acoustic guitar to play even in other keys for some variations that'll get you playing up the neck as well. So let's dive right in. You can see some teaching aids. We've got this close-up view here, and then we've got the chord diagrams on the screen. We're gonna jump right in, and we're gonna play this standard D major chord. And so you can see here, you're just strumming or finger picking down here from the 4th string down, the open D string, and then you've got your index finger on the 2nd fret of the G string. You've got your ring finger on the 3rd fret of the B string, and then you've got your middle finger on the 2nd fret, the F sharp note of the high E string there. So good old standard D chord. We're gonna move right along and show you some variations here. This is a D sus4. So all we're doing here, you can actually keep the same shape, but you're just adding your pinky, like so. You're adding your pinky on the 3rd fret there of the high E string, and that gives you a D sus4. You could rock back and forth between those two. And then, if we move along here, this is a real rich variation. This is a D add 4. Now you'll notice we do move slightly up the neck here. If you know your standard C shape, you're actually using your C shape and then you're sliding it up 2 frets. So your standard C shape, slide up 2 frets. And then I'm adding this pinky finger on the 5th fret of the high E string. So again, slide up 2, and then add that pinky. This is a D add 4. Real rich variation of a D chord. I really like this because you can even place your this ring finger just up 1 string to the low E string, and that gives you your D over A in a sense. This is an A note up top, so you can kind of use this real nice in finger picking. And again, don't worry if that's too advanced for you right now, but just showing you some variations of what this opens up for you. And then moving along, we now have an E minor. Now this would be, as we move up the D major scale, this is the 2nd scale degree. So this is our E minor. This is a standard E minor chord. So I won't spend a ton of time on this one, but open E string, the bottom there, the low E string. Then you've got your 2nd fret of the A string using your middle finger, 2nd fret of the D string using your ring finger. Everything else is open. And then a little variation for this is you could use these anchor shapes. Now this is an E minor 7. What I'm doing here is up top, I'm doing the 3rd fret of the B string. So that's actually common if you remember from your D. That's standard D shape. That's actually a kind of a common note. Same fingering even, so I'm using my ring finger. Then, right below that, kind of like that D sus4 that we just learned, you're using the 3rd fret with your pinky finger of the high E string. And then, up top here, you're just keeping that E minor shape that we just learned. Obviously, you're using some different fingers. You're using the index or pointer finger, and then you're using your middle finger right below that. But that's your E minor 7. And then, now this is a real rich variation of this E minor 7. Listen to that color. So this is fairly similar. You'll notice here in the sense where you're keeping this index finger here, and then we're changing the fingerings we're using. So now we're using the middle finger down here on the 3rd fret of the B string, and then we are placing our ring finger on the D string, 4th fret. And that's what gives this chord its color. Let me try and show you that on the close-up there. So again, a real pretty, just open sounding E minor 7 add 2. And let me know in another video, let me know in the comments if it would be helpful for you to dive into some theory, like why these chords, why they're called an E minor 7 and add 2 as opposed to just an E minor. Let me know if that would be helpful to you. Would love to create content around that if that would be helpful to you. But let's keep moving along. Next in our D major chord family here, as we move up the D major scale, we've got a D over F sharp. Now the F sharp is the 3rd This is the third scale degree, and the F sharp you play at the top here. So you can see this variation here, you play the standard D on top that we've learned, and then you could use your thumb to actually claw over the fret, the fingerboard here, and strum like so. And then you'll notice when we do this, we can open up this A up top, usually in the D. Remember, we started from the 4th string of the D string down. So now we can actually use that as kind of a big version of a D chord, doing that F sharp on the top. Now there are some different ways you can play this. I tend to play this shape really the most often. Again, also allows you to open up all the strings, but you'll notice instead of using my thumb up top here, I'm changing the fingering that I'm using for the D shape. I'm dropping this F sharp. So if I go to the standard D there, I'm dropping this F sharp note here. I'm not playing that, I'm letting that open. And then I'm switching the fingers that I'm using. So I'm using these 2 fingers here. And then I'm placing this index finger up top here for the F sharp note. Now I tend to have struggle making the stretch often, so I find it easier to switch to using my pinky. And then I'll actually use my pinky and then my middle finger on the 2nd fret of the G string. And again, I don't know, for me, I just find it simpler than making that stretch with the ring finger, getting the D note of the B string, the 3rd fret. And so I'll switch to using my pinky and playing this D over F sharp like that. So that's another variation, way to play the D over F sharp. And yeah, you could just see there's some variations here where, again, you don't have to play the A note there. So sometimes I will mute that A string, the 5th string. And then sometimes, as you can see here, I'll even mute, if you want kind of a more of a closed sound, you can mute this A, and you could even mute that high E. So those are those variations there. Let's move along to a true minor third. So this is now our F sharp minor 7. Now rather than play an F sharp minor bar chord, I really like using this open variation of an F sharp minor 7. So you'll see here, let me show that in view on the close-up here. So you've got the F sharp note on top, so the low E, the 2nd fret with our middle finger. Then we are muting this A string, and I'm just using the fleshy part of this middle finger here to mute that A string. Then we've got our ring finger on the D string, 2nd fret. And then right below that, the G string, we're using the pinky finger, 2nd fret. Let me actually move this here so you can see, make sure I don't go out of frame on the close-up here. So you can see, again, real rich F sharp minor 7. So that's that variation. Now there are some different ways to play this. You could also play an F sharp minor like this. Try and get this middle finger out of the way so you can see that in the close-up. So you can play it like this, where you've got on the G string, you've got 2nd fret using the index finger, pointer finger. Then you go 2 frets over 1 string up. So we're using our pinky. We're using our pinky on the D string, 4th fret. Then right above that, we're using our ring finger on the 4th fret of the A string, the 5th string. So, and then we are muting that top low E. So it's another way to play F sharp minor. You could either use that shape that we just looked at, or use that variation there. And then if we move along, now we get to our G chord. Now, instead of a common way you would often learn G is like that fingering. You'll see here, especially when playing in the key of D, I'll use this alternate fingering. So instead of using my ring finger down here on the 3rd fret of the 1st string, the high E string, I'll actually use my pinky, and then I'll use my ring finger here on the 3rd fret of the low E string, and then I'll catch the B note of the 2nd fret of the A string with my middle finger. And the reason why I often use this, it just is quicker to change chords this way in the key of D especially. Your pinky really is right here. So again, just a nice way to change chords quicker in the key of D. And then it also, as you'll see here, it frees up these 2 fingers to be able to do some variations. So I'm going to show you this G add 2. This works real well in the key of D. Now I have got this in kind of the standard fingering that you would often learn. So this would be your standard fingering. Again, it's back to that ring finger being on the 3rd fret. Now, if you substitute the fingering we just used, again, you're using the same, you're hitting the same notes, but you're just using different fingers. So if I'll show you this here, going from D, there's your G add 2. Again, real rich, pretty sparkly chord variation. Then we've got a G major 7. Now this works real well in the key of D because you've got this F sharp note, which is also in your key. So again, just real colorful chord, adds a little bit of tension, going from the D. And it's also very easy to change to this chord because you've got this ring finger anchoring here on your 3rd fret of the B string. You're just switching, you know, where you're placing your pointer finger and your middle finger. You're going from D to that G major 7. Just drop my pick in the sound hole. Don't do that. Let me grab another pick here. There we go. So that's your G major 7. All right, moving along, we've got a standard A. Now, you'll see here, I often do the fingering of the A like this, just because my fingers, I really struggle to do kind of a traditional fingering where you use the ring finger on the 2nd fret of the B string here. So I use my pinky. So this is moving along. This is now our 5 chord in the key of D major. If we move up the scale. So that's just a standard A shape. Won't spend a bunch of time on that. You can see there's that traditional, kind of the traditional fingering for it. But again, I really prefer using this fingering here. Now, if we do some variations here, I often use this shape or this variation of the A in the key of D, especially in A sus4. So if you switch from the D, and it really just opens up. I'm trying to show you the way that these changes are often very slight that you're making with the different chords. So that was switching from the A to kind of a variation of that G add 2 that we just looked at. So this A sus4, you can see here, the first 2 notes from our standard A, like so, are the same. And then you'll notice we are just adding the pinky on the 3rd fret of the B string. So you'll see that there. Let me try and get that out the way for you on the close-up. So again, an A sus4. Then you've also got this variation, which is an A sus2. Now all we're doing here is lifting off. If you do use the standard version of the A, like so, you're just lifting off this ring finger and playing the A sus2 like that. So the B string, this B string, the 2nd string is just open, and that's what's giving it that suspended 2 sound. Also a very helpful chord variation of A in the key of D, especially when you're playing there. Now, if we move along, our B minor is our 6th scale degree in the key of D major. And so B minor we often kind of shy away from because you have to bar like so. And barring can be, again, difficult, especially when you're learning. And so this is a little bit of a variation. Instead of barring, you're just lifting off the bar. You're muting this high E string with the fleshy part of the index finger here. And then you're playing kind of a partial bar chord, if you will, where we're not barring, but we're using that same shape. You can hear it's a little bit of a closed sounding chord, but again, will work for the key of D, especially when we need that 6 minor. But there's also this open B minor 7, which this is really nice. It's very similar to the D over F sharp shape. If I go back to that for a second, literally if you use this fingering for that D over F sharp, literally all I'm doing is taking this index finger and moving it 1 string down to the A string 2nd fret, and then I'm making sure I mute this top string, the low E string. And then you've got this real nice, colorful, open B minor 7th. And sorry, this ring finger I know keeps getting in the way on the close-up here, but try to show you that there. So this ring finger's not doing anything, it's off. If I move that for a second, you've got those 2 notes. And And again, the pinky finger on the 3rd fret of the B string. So B minor 7, real colorful. And then lastly, before we get back up to our D, we've got an A over C sharp. Now this can be a little bit tricky, but what we're doing here is we're barring the A, kind of traditional A shapes with our index finger. And then we're reaching up to the 4th fret of the A string, the 5th string up, to get this C sharp right there. You can see the 4th fret. And that's your A over C sharp, which then leads back to your D if you're going up the D major scale with these chord shapes in the chord family of the key of D. Let me show you a few variations here though. We do have a D5 kind of power chord shape that you can use, and it's actually real nice because you can, instead of just doing a power chord where you kind of just use these 3 strings, you can actually let these top notes ring out and it sounds real open. Let me get that in view there on the close-up. So again, real nice open sounding D5, and this works really well, especially when you go from the A over C sharp that we just looked at up to that D5. Again, you can let the B string, the B string and the high E string ring out. Again, works real well in the key of D. Now, what I want to do is I want to show you some movable shapes. Now, these will actually work. You'll notice they're not going to have a name on them because these will actually work even for other keys. But you've got a major movable shape. So now this, I'm going to use, let's take our G as a reference here. So I'm going to use G, and I'm going to start on the 3rd fret here of the low E string. And I'm forming that shape that you see in the chord diagram there. And now you'll notice what you can do too. So we've got, let me just show you this here. I'm using the index finger, muting the A string. Then we've got this open. So the D string is open. The G string, we're fretting, in this case, it's the 4th fret. And then right below that, 1 string down, 1 fret back. And again, I don't want to give you the fret names on this because you can actually move the shape. And I'm going to show you this here. So this is a G. Move it 2 frets up and you've got an A, because we're starting using this as a reference here on the low E string. That's an A note. So once again, there's your G. You can move it all the way up to the 10th fret. Let me get in view here. And that would be your D. So I'm going to show you this here. I'm going to widen the close-up shot here so you can see this. So once again, back to 5, fret 5, it's an A. G, back to our 3rd fret. The 10, up to the 10th fret, would be our D. So it works real well. So you can, for example, do something like this. So that was our D, G, and A, as opposed to going... As opposed to down there, even maybe you've got 2 acoustic guitar players, you can go, one of you can be going D, down to the G, 2 frets up to A. Now you might be wondering, well, what about minor chords? Now we do have a minor movable shape. And so in this case, I'm going to use our B minor as a reference. So go up to our 7th fret, starting at the low E string 7th fret. This is a B note. And I'm going to use this B minor as a reference. So what we're doing is we're going, using the low E string, we're using our middle finger. Then, similar to the major, we're muting the next string down, the A string, letting the D string ring open. Then we've got all in line, as you can see, they're in the same frets. So in this case, still on the 7th fret, we've got our ring finger strumming there, or fretting that note. Then right below that, we're using our pinky finger. And then we are muting this, the high E string. So you hear that, that's a B minor variation, B minor 7. So when you can combine these two, you get a real rich variations that you can use. So I'm going to show you an example. Let's go from D, B minor to G, but using those movable shapes. So we're going to go D, there's that B minor, G, once more, D, B minor, so again, really pretty movable chord shapes you can use. And again, you can transfer these over even to playing in other keys. If you know your notes on the low E string, you'll be able to kind of play these different variations in even different keys. So for example, if you're playing in another key, let's say you're playing in A or G, you could actually use those variations to play in those other keys as well. It's not just limited to the key of D. So one more time, let me show you this. Here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to start way back at the beginning here on D, and I'm actually going to take the chord diagrams off the screen for you, because what I'm going to do is, the idea of knowing all these different chords is so that you can play any progression in the key of D and just be super flexible. So something I would recommend practicing is starting down here with D and just work your way up the scale. So if you know D major scale, you're essentially working your way up the scale in chords, using these chord shapes. So it's playing all the chords in the chord family of D major. So we're going to start at our D. We're going to go E minor. I'm using that E minor 7. There's that D over F sharp, using a variation there. Then there's a G major 7, A suspended 4, B minor 7 shape. There's that A over C sharp. There's that kind of power chord D5. So you want to be able to kind of play all those chords in sequence. And then again, if you use these movable shapes, man, you can get a real rich. Let's just take a progression like, let's say, so it'd be a 1, 4, 5, 6. So it'd be a D, G, A, B minor 7. And you could use these high shapes or these movable shapes. So it'd be D down here. Excuse me, the G. The A suspended. There's your B minor 7. D, G, move 2 up to the A, back to D. Well, friends, hopefully that is helpful. I love playing in the key of D on the acoustic guitar, and hopefully, especially those movable shapes, unlock some things for you, and just, again, some tools that you could throw in your toolbox playing acoustic guitar, especially if you're playing with another player. It really helps to have that under your belt, and you can kind of be playing in different parts of the guitar neck. So hopefully that's helpful for you. If you are a worship leader, before you go, I would love to get a free gift into your hands. If you go to influentialworship.com, you can put in your email there. This is completely free. You can download a guide that is 6 practices you can implement this week to help you gain confidence in your worship leading, and not an arrogant, proud confidence, but a confidence in the Lord. I created this guide because when I started leading worship, I had no resources. It was baptism by fire, and I wish I had had resources like this. I wish I had YouTube available to me when I started, and man, just to be able to learn and grow constantly as a worship leader. So please go to influentialworship.com, download that guide, and I will see you in the next video.